Hello and welcome to Cracking the Cryptic. Today I'm going to have a look at my solve, which I've just done, of today's Times crossword puzzle, and maybe point out some of the instructive points about getting to grips with the cryptic clues. So here we are at the start. I will say that in this puzzle there are some words that are not, in my opinion, very straightforward, and I'm searching around at the start for something where I can find especially a bit of helpful wordplay for the first entry in the puzzle. Now here we go. Hollow skins. Now hollow so often means take the outside letters of either the word before or after this. Obviously that has to be skins this time, if that's what hollow is going to mean. So that could mean the letters SS, which would be hollow skins. Left is so often L. Now you don't get all that many words with SSL in, and if you were to put that SSL combination in something that is Tuesdays, then maybe we can get scraps. And I have to admit, I thought of hassles first. Then I began thinking, well, maybe I'm on the wrong track. And then I realized that obviously Tuesday abbreviates to choose, and with SSL in we get tussles. So that can mean scraps, not in the sense of food remains, obviously, but in the sense of fights. So a neat clue, bit of misdirection there. Moving on to 11 across, ending in L. Young animal. Young animal, I can't see a kind of crossword-ese meaning for that, so I'm assuming I have to find a young animal. The fed to suggests that I have to put something into a young animal. So I'm looking for a kind of standard animal young word ending in L. And the only one I could think of at all was foal. So if you put something into that to get important, well, focal is another word for important, being the focus of something. And C would therefore have to be a vitamin. Well, vitamin C is clearly a vitamin. So that was quite nice. Now what I do next is I do go back to the words, even though I've looked at these clues before. I want to have another go now that I've got a letter in the grid, because it makes a big difference. I mean, this is really the key lesson, is having something to guide you when you're thinking about something does make a big difference. Now one across was one of these quite hard words in this puzzle, by which I mean a word that's really not in common usage. I had to dig back a bit for this. Corporal drunk in charge when guarding master. Now, when guarding master, again, looks like crosswordese for putting either M or MA into something. MA can be Master of Arts. M, I think, can be abbreviation just for master. In charge, that can often be IC. And now that I've got the T, I can see that we could have a word ending in IC. And corporal, now that it could sometimes be an abbreviated to CPL, but it's much more likely to be the kind of older meaning of corporal, meaning of the body. And eventually it occurred to me, and I'll play on here, we're still only 39 seconds into the solved puzzle, that I do know a kind of Latin-based word for of the body with an M in it and ending in TIC. I think I move away from the clue and then realize that I do know that word, and I go back to one across, and the answer is somatic. So well done if you knew that. Soma, I think, is Latin for the body. If you'd asked me before, is somatic definitely a word, I wouldn't have been 100% sure, but the clue so clearly gives it. The drunk in this case now is SOT, S-O-T, a habitual drinker. That takes us to one down. Primary sold packed lunches in fast food joint. Well, primarily normally means use the first letters, and I was thinking maybe SP. Now I've got the F, I can see that joint at the end is probably the definition. How does spliff work? Spliff being a marijuana cigarette, obviously, or a joint. Well, it's all the first letters of sold packed lunches in fast food. Quite a neatly worded clue to get fast food joint into the clue there by using fast food for its initial letters. Now, tricky staff at 2 down. I was absolutely convinced for a little while that this had to begin music. The staff on which musical notes are written is clearly a music thing, and I've got M and C in the first word. Had to be music something. But in the end, I did also realise that it could begin magic. It's an odd clue. It must be either a brilliant and-lit or a cryptic definition, because there's just not much going on in the clue there. And I think I leave it for now, because I can't decide if it could begin music or magic. And 9 across. Make laws. Now, at last, there's a straightforward definition, and I've got the L and the S in the grid. So I'm absolutely convinced that that's legislate. In fact, the wordplay is pretty tricky, but thank God for the easy definition. In the wordplay, you have on, which is the leg side in cricket, giving you leg. Introduction of inflammable is just the letter I. And then to rubbish is to slate. So that's really misdirecting you. Nobody's expecting that to be a verb there. And that makes up legislate. But thank God for the easy definition. Now that takes us back to magic, I think. Although I did have a look around some other clues. And I suddenly realised that a staff might be in the sense of a wooden rod there. So a magic wand might be said to be a tricky staff rather than staff being tricky. Now, scouting around a few of the other clues, here at 13 across, well, I can see this is an anagram of Socrates' usual, because the word complicated says make an anagram of that. They've got 13 letters. So the clue is, the definition is challenge for division. And I was convinced that had to be about maths. But I guess I was being misdirected by the clue. I thought I was avoiding misdirection, but I was being misdirected. I couldn't see what that anagram was. And after a little while, I gave up looking for it and decided that it would be a lot easier with another letter in the solution to help guide me. So moving on to the next long one, where I've got a D. And again, changes is screaming anagram. So it looks like acts as his mood will be the letters that one has to anagram. And the first word in the clue is pervert or pervert. Well, there's not that many perverts that the Times would dare to put in, I think, as an example of a pervert, if that's what it means. But one of them is, and it's still a bit edgy, is the neat anagram of acts as his mood, sadomasochist. So in that goes, with no more thought about that. And then I move on to some of the downs that, it was a relief to get that, because I'd had a look at 4 and 5 down, and I really do want to work on words where I've got a letter in the grid. Now the next few that I look at don't particularly help me. I think 14, 15 and 16 down, not very easy clues at all. 15 was perhaps a little easier than I gave it credit for and escaped through at this point. You can see me looking at that. Intelligent European principle. Well, I was thinking European's normally E. Is there a word beginning with E with another 8-letter word after it meaning principle? It could mean intelligent. Couldn't think of that. 16's a very long clue, so there's a lot going on in that. And I gave up quite quickly. Now, this clue, 18 down, this is worth looking at. Marshall in LA worked with 25. Well, that almost certainly is going to mean that I'm going to need to check 25 across. And indeed, I might even need to solve it. 25 across is 5 letters. So if we work its letters with LA, we should get something defined by Marshall. Now, I was thinking, do I know a French Marshall, Marshall Ney? But maybe they aren't spelt with 2 L's. So what can this sort of Marshall be? And I was certainly, a bit surprised. So I was quite interested though. I was wondering what sort of Marshall can this be? So I had a look at 25 across. Artist's champ. Well, I happened to think, possibly because I'm not much of an art aficionado, one of the artists I do think of for a 5-letter word is Munch. There's a few others like Monet and Manet and Degas that would sometimes run through my brain, but Munch is obviously famous for the scream, and to munch can be to champ on something. So that looked like it's going to be right, and it had to have an M in it to work for this anagram in 18 down. So I'm kind of using the 2 clues with each other. But now I've got M and H and LA. No, in fact, sorry, I've got the letters of Munch and LA, and that's meant to give me an anagram that means Marshall. And all I can think of is Manchul or Mulchan, and they're not words that mean anything to me. I'm a bit scared at this point that there could be some word Mulchan that means a marshal in some Asian language and has come into English, but certainly not known to me. So I gave up for a while there, and I think in some ways that is the most interesting clue in the puzzle. 22 down, anxiety relating to certain countries that's not his. Well, anxiety, again, it's a nice clear definition. With the N in the middle of 5 letters, I thought of panic. How does that mean relating to certain countries that's not his? Well, you have to think quite laterally of the word Hispanic, which relates to certain countries. Not many clues about what sort, but if you take out his, you get panic. So 27 across, the fact that it's 232 is very helpful. As soon as I've seen that it's 232 and there's a C there, I have to admit I'm thinking no can do. And the clue is party enforcing 6-pack ban, ? Well, if you had a do and you were insisting that nobody brought any beer cans, you might call that a no can do. So it's a little joke there. Quite neat as well. Now 16 down, savings at an end. It stops celebrity backing spender with lowbrow tastes. Well, I'm aware that the dictionary took in a few years ago the phrase Essex man and Essex girl, I think. And it defines Essex man, I think perhaps a little cruelly, as someone with lots of money to spend and lowbrow tastes. Let's leave it at that. So this is made up, I think, of the letter S being the end of savings. Then it defines sex. And then S, sex, stops, i.e. gets in the way of name being celebrity backing. And that makes up Essex man. So that's a little bit complicated. And I'm still worried about this Mulchan possibility at 18 across. 21 is an anagram with X for times in it. That's reasonably straightforward. But now I'm thinking, well, what is going on with this anagram? I'm convinced that the wordplay is right. It's got to be an anagram of Munch and AL. And Mulchan could be a word, Malchun could be a word, but that's a bit less likely. So I was about to put in Mulchan when I thought, well, the C obviously can't go anywhere else apart from in the middle, can it? Can't go at the end, in between the H and the N. But it could be a name beginning MCL. And then I thought of the name McLuhan or McLuhan. And somewhere in the recesses of my brain, yes, I know there is somebody called Marshall McLuhan. I didn't know what he did. If you'd asked me what he did during the puzzle, I'd have made a wild guess and been completely wrong that he was something in showbiz. In fact, I've looked it up since solving the puzzle. Marshall McLuhan is a Canadian philosopher and writer who, amongst other things, was famous for saying the medium is the message. Well, that is a rough word to put in the puzzle, in my opinion. And then to just define as Marshall, that really is a general knowledge stretch. And the reason I'm kind of offended by it is because the letter combination is so unexpected. MCL at the beginning of the word. And no actual clear definition that it's a person's name. That's hard. So I was very happy to sort of dredge that from the back of my brain. Now, a state beginning with I and ending with O is always likely to be Idaho. Not quite sure what the meaning of bore. I suppose if you bear something, you have it. And that brings had backwards in it. 25 across, there's another word that you don't see all that much. Applejack. Brandy is the definition. And I can see the bits of putting PP for very quietly in ale. That gives you apple. And then man is Jack. I suppose that's a definition rather than an example, because you can say every man Jack or every Jack on board or something. But again, Applejack's a bit of a recherche word. I was quite pleased to know that. And 14 down, Another unusual word, this time because it's a bit modern. And really, it was just thinking about what might fit that let me come up with technopop there. And tech was the college to help kind of confirm it. Illness from stillness without the ST. This is hard. 20 down. One who fails to beat king and queen. Well, given the K there, that's likely to end with K for king and ER for queen. So one who beats, and you need a 3-letter word for beat. Well, sorry, one who fails, and you need a 3-letter word for beat to begin it. Well, there's a lot of words for beat. Lamb and hit and tap and pat and I don't know. It's very difficult. I left it for a while. Solved this Pasteur, old Frenchman with pasture slightly adjusted as specified. And then 24 across, John, so likely to be Lou or Lav in a clue, so that became loofah. And now, well, to tan can be to beat, and to tank is to lose something deliberately, so that's possible. I think in the whole puzzle, that was the word I was most worried there could be an alternative for. 15 across 15 down turned out to be more straightforward than I thought, and 13 across, that anagram, challenge for division, that was for soldiers in a division and a saw course. That was very fair. I was, hats off. I got a bit misled by that. Still can't do 4 and 5 down. 6 down, just an O in it at the end. Old scientist, that looks like the definition, but would an old scientist end in O? Well, luckily, I eventually realized that there was one famous Galileo, and that involves Galilee, briefly, i.e. not quite completed, and then over is O from the cricket abbreviation. 8 down at last, straightforward, a T, and then an anagram. Somebody's mum pinched by sexist. I couldn't see what that was in 5 across. Mug shot or big shot would fit, maybe some other things. 10, you've seen this device occasionally. Prime letters for cluing a single. Well, if you take the positions in the phrase cluing a single that are prime numbers, so that would be positions 2, 3, 5, 7, and 11, you get the letters of Luigi, defined by Italian. If you haven't come across that before, that's hard. 12, couldn't see what this garment was. I could see it might end in suit, but that would give an unlikely U at the end of 7 down. And 7 down's the last clue for me to look at for the first time. After vacation, homework at uni contains first class poem. Well, I'm lucky here again, a bit of crossword experience tells me that after vacation, instead of meaning at the end of a holiday, in crosswords it can mean after you vacate this coming word, what are you left with? If you take all the inside letters out of homework, you just get HK. Uni can be abbreviated to U, they're both abbreviations for university, and then that contains A1 or first class to give you the haiku poem. Pretty convoluted, but again, that after vacation was really a good hook into it for me. I eventually worked out that somebody is the definition here. Mum is shh, as in be quiet, and the sexist is a bigot, so that was a very neat construction. It took me a while to look at 5 down. Mark can mean an awful lot of things, like it can mean a lot of specific marks and to note something. So no benefit to me that it's my own name. Brother, though, can be BR, and eventually, it took me a bit too long to work out that Eve was the first wife. So breathe is a musical note or mark, but very loose definition, really. Extreme difficulty with fit on small, loose garment. Well, I eventually worked out that a shell suit could work for that. Hell is the extreme difficulty there, and suit is fit. And then we're left with this last word, again, quite a tricky word, not in common usage, and I wouldn't have said I knew it before. but attendance is the definition. Now, Europe it can't actually be E, but it can sometimes be EU, or in this case, it turns out to be EUR. And when that breaks or goes into a word meaning frame, but a word meaning frame with the letter I thrown out of it, we can take chassis, take the I out and put EUR in, and we get chasseur, chasseurs, who must be attendants. Not a word I know for sure. And just check that it's right. As I said, I'm most worried about tanker at this point, but it turns out it is correct. I had a quick look to see. I mean, that felt like a really hard puzzle. There are some ridiculous words in that. And as you can see, I don't think anybody's come in with a time quicker than me, and that they're not real funny bunnies and guesser. They're neutrinos who solve it on paper and then fill it in. But Verlaine's done well at 8:28. And that is, in my view, a hard puzzle. And how to get through it. Use the wordplay where you need to. Be aware of some of these possibilities like after vacation and prime and hollow. They're good things to learn about because they can help you. A lot of container indicators here as well. Breaking and stops, meaning getting in the way of the rest, the other words. But I don't know, there's no substitute for experience, and I don't know how to advise you to learn words like Applejack, Semantic, Chasseur, and McLuhan. Oh, McLuhan. I expect there'll be some comment on Marshall McLuhan today. And I hope you can write in the comments and tell me, well, I damn well ought to know all about him because he's really important, because I don't. There we go. I hope you enjoyed cracking the cryptic, and hope to see you again soon. Bye now.